The name of the movie is Warrior. The movie begins with Tommy visiting Patty after a 14-year hiatus. It seems that he is single and unmarried, as he says that it is difficult to find a woman who would accept marriage to a boxer. He offers him some coffee, but Patty is a former alcoholic, so he refuses. And he's going up to 1,000 days without drinking alcohol. Tommy tries to adjust his mood, because he was a bad man for his mother. Elsewhere, we find Tommy's brother Brendan disguised as a princess for his daughter's birthday, while his wife, Tess, is furious at being over budget on gifts. And when the party is over, she goes to her job, which is in the bar, and she asks Brendan to take care of the girls. At Colt's gym, we watch a report on the self-defense sport of billionaire Riley, who will hold a tournament in the name of Sparta. The winner of the tournament will receive a prize of $5 million. Tommy enters the club where he was training to get his monthly subscription, and he notices the Sparta advertisement, and while he is training, he finds a fierce fighter who beats people and mocks them. Colt offers $200 to anyone who can defeat this fighter. Tommy proposes to fight, but Colt refuses, and upon his return, the wrestler mocks him, so Tommy asks Colt again to allow him to confront. He agrees, provided that he is responsible for his decision, so he says that he has signed up to take responsibility for what is happening with him. The fight begins, and one of the audience records the fight. Tommy eventually wins, and then goes to get the money from Colt. We watch Brendan, who works as a physics teacher and explains to his students in an interesting way Newton's law, and everyone loves him. After work, he goes to the financial advisor, who tells him that he is late in paying the mortgage costs. He mortgaged his status to pay for his daughter's heart transplant. He asked him to pay the amount within 90 days, and he says that he will not be able to pay, so the advisor suggests that he submit a bankruptcy application to mortgage his house. On the other hand, we find Patty watching old clips of Tommy in a wrestling match during which he won 7 gold medals, where Patty was his coach. Meanwhile, Colt comes to him for information on Tommy, where he tells him that he managed to defeat his strongest wrestler. He asks him to go to him for any information he wants and closes the door in his face. As we watch, Brendan tells his wife that he will take a night shift as a bouncer in a club in order to get money, but he actually went to participate in a combat fight, where he starts his first fight with Mike, who looks athletic, but Brendan manages to defeat him. The organizers tell him that he has to win 2 battles as well in order to win the prize. Later, he has his return home in the morning. His wife sees the bruises on his body, and he confesses to her that he went to the fight as he had promised her not to do such things, but due to his debts he had no other choice, so Tess asks him not to participate in any fight again. Tommy goes to meet Patty at a restaurant to tell him about the tournament and asks him to do his training, which he agrees to. Back at school, while all the students are talking about Brendan, someone saw him in battle. He enters the classroom with bruises on his face. Principal Joe comes and calls him to his office and tells him the supervisor is coming, who wanted an explanation about the fight. He replies that he fights for money. The supervisor asks him not to do that again if he wants to stay in his job. Ho returns home and tells Tess that he has been suspended without pay until the next semester, and he suggests that he engage in low-level fights so they can get paid. His wife tries to refuse, but they have no choice. The next day he goes to the gym, where he meets an old friend, Frank, and tells him his story about the mortgage of the house and asks him to train him, but Frank tells him the truth, as he does not find him having enough experience to enable him to defeat strong fighters, so he tells him that he needs that and that his wife knows. Frank agrees, but tells him he can't train him all the time because he's busy training Marco for the Sparta tournament. In the evening, Patty visits Brendan, and he tells him that he has gone 1,000 days without doing anything bad, and he wants to celebrate with him, but he refuses. On his way, Patty tells him that Tommy is back at his house and they are training together. This made him angry because his brother didn't tell him anything and because they were training without thinking of him. Tommy was and still is Patty's favorite because he's better at fighting. Later, Tommy goes to Colt's club, and Colt tells him that he has accepted his participation in the Sparta tournament. After that, he calls a woman to check on her condition, as he had served in the army with her husband, who died, and promised him to take care of his wife after his death. After a few days, Tommy and Brendan start practicing, and the news is all about the Sparta tournament, where there will be one winner out of 16 fighters. Among them was the Russian fighter Koba, who never lost a fight. Tess watches this news on TV to show the fight between Brendan and Marco, who gives up and loses to Brendan. Weeks later, Marco has an accident, and Frank takes him to the hospital. There he is informed that Marco can no longer participate in Sparta. Brendan asks Frank to take Marco's place in Sparta. He hesitates at first, but he promised him that he would think about it. After collecting information about him, he called him the next day to tell him that he had agreed to join Sparta. His wife gets angry because she's afraid he might get paralyzed or hurt, but Brendan tells her he has to try or they'll be homeless and asks her to support him, but she refuses. The Sparta tournament begins where the best fighters are there to prove who is the strongest in the world. Tommy and Brendan meet, but Tommy tries to avoid him. News spreads that Tommy was a combat soldier in Iraq, and one of the soldiers recognizes him through the news and thanks him for saving his life, but this matter disturbed him. He goes outside to meet his brother, who offers him coffee, but he refuses. Tommy left his family 14 years ago while Brendan stayed with his wife, which is why Tommy does not consider him his brother because he preferred a girl over his mother, and he was the one who didn't complete the plan. In Sparta, the stadium was packed with spectators. Tommy competes in the first stage, and who suddenly became very popular and was called a war hero, but without any information about his identity. During his entrance, he skipped all the interviews and didn't even have entrance music. No photo was taken of him, yet he is still loved by the public. They put on the gloves and the fight begins. Commentators believe his presence is just luck, but he managed to defeat his opponent. The next fighter is Brendan, who steps into the ring. We watch Paddy cheer for the win. He starts to fight while the commentators jeer at Brendan, and although he loses in the first round, in the end he manages to get his first victory and informs his wife, who was waiting for a message from him impatiently, and she refuses to watch the fight. Also, Koba beat his opponent. And now it's Brendan's turn again, who managed to get another win. While Tommy only took seconds to eliminate his opponent, he qualifies for the last qualifier between 4 fighters. In the evening, we find Tommy cannot sleep, so that Paddy comes to tell him that he is proud of what he did for the soldier in Iraq, but he received a painful answer that the role of the father is not appropriate for him and that he loved him more when he was drunk. This made Paddy sad, and he went back to his old habit, but Tommy came to him the next day out of guilt and hugged him. Later, when it was time to fight, when there were only 4 people left, the audience was chanting Tommy's name, as he will confront the person who faced him in Colt's gym and defeat him, and now he wants revenge on him because he defeated him in a previous confrontation, but he did not succeed in that, as Tommy defeated him again and quickly. And now Brendan's fight against Koba, and very little chance that Brendan will win. We see Brendan's wife is there to support him. The fight begins and Brendan takes heavy damage and loses in the first and second rounds. Frank comes and supports him as the third round is his last chance or he will be left with no home. The fight intensifies until Brendan finally defeats him. He advances to the finals to face Tommy. Word spreads that Tommy has left the service as a soldier, and at the end of the tournament he will be arrested, and he wanted to give the prize to his friend's wife if he won. After he changed his surname to his mother's, people realized that Tommy and Brendan were brothers and would face off in the finals of the biggest tournament of all time. Brendan gets support from everyone, while Tommy is on his own. The fight begins and Tommy wins the first and second round with his powerful and accurate punch. Then the third round ended, and in the last round, Brendan hit and strangled his brother, during which he asks him to forgive him after telling him several times that he loves him. Tommy finally gives up. Everyone is happy that Brendan won and achieved the $5 million tournament prize. But in the end, Brendan helps his brother and hugs him, where we find that the fighting has restored the cohesion of the family. Here the movie ends. Thank you for watching.